Affairs don't begin in the bedroom, they begin in childhood. In the part of you that decided she needed to bury her truth just to be loved. The part that's now screaming to be seen. I'm Alex Croxford, and this is the Deeper Love podcast, where we name the shame, face the guilt, and help you find your way back to yourself. So let's begin. Welcome back to the Deeper Love podcast. If you are here, you probably know what it feels like to live two lives at once. There's the one that everybody can see, the one where you are capable and together and strong, and the one underneath that feels like she isn't being met emotionally, physically, not having the desire that she longed for to be met sexually in the way that she longed for. And then, of course, the affair happened. And as much as that cracked you and broke you wide open, and trust me, I know how much it broke you open, there was probably something in that that meant you felt more alive than you have done for years. And now you're here trying to understand how you got here, trying to make sense of who am I if this is what I am capable of, trying to figure out if you are ever going to feel that alive or that seen ever again without all of the chaos and the secrecy of the affair. And that is exactly what today's conversation is about. I am joined by Lauren Tobey. She's a trauma-informed coach, creator of the Spiral framework, and someone who knows intimately what it is to have built an entire identity around achievement and capability, and then it all fall apart. Lauren's work is about understanding the difference between who you actually are and who you learned to be in order to survive. And when I found her work, I thought, whoa, she is mapping the woman I work with every single day. So in this conversation, we talk about the mask, the high achieving, perfect, capable version of you that became your whole identity. And we talk about why the affair felt the way it did, what your nervous system was actually doing in those moments, and what becomes possible when you stop running from yourself and you start walking towards that instead. So let's get into it. Lauren, I would love to start off with the episode with you telling us a little bit about yourself, how you got into this work, how you find yourself here today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you. So I really started this work after I exploded a 10-year marriage. We had been in marriage for 10 years. We had a daughter and had just adopted our son. And I had this moment where I was like, I don't know who I am right now. Like, who am I within this marriage if I'm not mom, wife, executive, worker? Like, who am I? And in doing that, instead of sitting with that question, I blew everything up. And I was like, I went nuts, honestly. And so it ended up in a divorce. I lost a ton of friends, not really sure, what to do with the kids, and really having kind of a crisis of identity. Like, okay, who am I now? And of course, that happened in February of 2020. And so in March of 2020, we got to pile on top of that, some stuff, that happened. And so I really went through a period of about 4 to 5 months where I was 100% dissociated. And I was watching my life. I wasn't living my life. I took care of the kids. I did the things I needed to do. I logged into the Zoom meetings and all of that. But I sat there and had no idea what was happening. And then I had another moment where I was like, what am I doing? Like, this isn't me. This isn't helpful. What am I doing? And so I really worked to rebuild kind of my identity after that. And then a few years later, I was let go from my job. And I realized after my divorce, I had really built who I was behind the mask of being this executive at this nonprofit. And so rather than finding myself, I just found a prettier mask. And so when I lost that job, I was like, okay, this is a problem. And I started noticing patterns to similarities between when I got divorced and had my moment and then when I got laid off and had my moment. And that's when I really started digging in and saying, there's something to this. And that led me to this work. And so, really, through my lived experience, and then I went to school to validate what I already knew, what I had already developed, my framework. And so, I'm a double certified trauma specialist and then an NLP master practitioner. But I say my favorite degree is the life I lived, and that's the way I get to help women is through that experience.
I thank you so much for sharing that story. There are so many crossovers between our story. Even the
Yeah.
year of the dissolution is actually wild. So tell me, what did you discover? Like, it sounds pretty much that you went from this married, very successful executive at the nonprofit with your kids and kind of the perfect
Yeah.
looking life, which obviously
Mhm.
then burnt down to the ground, and you started on this journey, this inner reflection journey. What was it that you discovered about yourself or who it was that you are beneath those labels?
Yeah, so it was crazy because, I lived a very normal childhood. By all accounts, people would say, it was a privileged childhood. I had both my parents. We had plenty of money. I got to do the sports I wanted to do. There was never overt abuse in my household. So when people started talking about like, oh, a childhood wound or this or that, I'm like, I don't have that. I had a normal childhood. Everything was fine. But when all of this happened and I started looking back, it was realizing that my entire life I'd been wearing this high achiever mask. And if I wasn't high achieving, then I was a failure. There was no middle ground. And I was like that as a kid. I took all the honors classes. I made straight A's. I, achieved. And I associated achievement and success with my worth. And when I finally was able to take a deeper look at myself, I realized if I took off that high achiever, high functioning, perfect mask, I didn't know who was under there. And that was scary to be, putting that down and not knowing who or what was under there. But the person I was able to find, I always assumed it was okay, well, you get rid of the trauma or get rid of whatever's happening and you're going to go back and be this wonderful person. But what I realized is while I was under that mask the whole time, I was also developing and learning from each situation. I just wasn't doing it consciously yet because of the situation I was in. So when I finally got to put those masks down, I was like, oh, there's a pretty cool person under here. And she's learned from all of these mistakes. So if I said I wanted to go back to the person I was before all of this, I wouldn't have the knowledge and all the strength and all the things I learned from what I went through. And so that was my favorite part was seeing, that this person, this identity was developing all along. She was just waiting to get the chance to come out.
Yes. And what does it feel like now living in the life that you are in 2026 versus before you burnt your marriage down? What would you say you experience differently?
Yeah, I mean, it's just for me, it's knowing where I am and who I am. And that's a lot of the work I do is helping people to realize like you're not going to get this end enlightened life where then nothing bad ever happens to you and you get to, live on the mountaintop at sunset for the rest of your life, right? Life is going to life. Things are going to happen. Things in the environment, things in your family, things in your own internal world. You're going to end up back in those, what I call the ashes, which is that kind of dissociated, numb, not sure what life is like for you anymore. You're going to end up back there many times. And, it's not a sexy thing to sell. It's not a great marketing tool for me to say, you're going to hit these really bad periods again, but it's true. And, sugarcoating it, I think, is a lot of what difficulties we run into with a lot of these wellness modalities is people think, okay, the goal is to be fulfilled and enlightened and done. So when they end up back in the ashes, it's the shame spiral all over again because now they failed at healing. The
Mm.
healing works for everyone else but them. And so why are they so messed up that it doesn't work? So
Yeah.
what I really do is talk to people about, you're gonna hit the ashes again. The mastery is being able to identify that you're in them, what you need to do to get out of them, and how to get back to yourself quicker. And
Yeah.
so through that work, every time you hit there, you arise quicker. And that's what I've noticed about myself. I mean, sometimes I can catch myself within 30 minutes to an hour. Sometimes it takes a couple days. A couple weeks ago, I was in the ashes for almost a week because I was just couldn't get there, couldn't do it. But you're going to get better at it. You're going to master it. You're going to be able to get back to yourself quicker. And that's what I notice about, my life. If the kids are acting a fool, they're running around, they're being loud, and I can take that beat and say, it's okay. Like, this isn't a reflection on you as a mom or as a parent, which in the past I would have been like, I'm a horrible parent. I don't know how to take care of my kids, all of these things. And now I'm able to take that beat and say, no, this is something that's happening, not something that's you're creating. So,
Yeah, the difference between being able to just acknowledge what is happening rather than creating an
mhm,
entire narrative and story about who you are because of what's happening. And I think that,
mhm,
especially as being a high achiever or perfectionist or somebody who has kind of made life through being the one that is good or successful, when those things happen in life, we tend to make it mean everything about ourselves.
yeah,
And that just continues to perpetuate the story that deep down, maybe I'm not good enough. And actually,
mhm,
I need to achieve more and I need to be better. But what I see so much, not only in my clients, but also in myself, and I'd love to hear your reflection of this, is that mask that we wear of the high achiever, and many of us will have learned that from childhood, as you said, even
mhm,
if we're not aware of that right
right,
now, it will be
mhm,
in your subconscious, in your nervous system,
yeah,
that that keeps people at a distance
mhm,
from us,
yeah,
because no one can really get to someone who presents as perfect and
yeah,
having it all together and knowing everything. And I think this is so much of society celebrates perfectionists. I remember
mhm,
I would be very proud of how much of a perfectionist I was and how much
yeah,
time I spent looking after my body and my skin and my career. And and yet I was so unaware of the distance that I was creating between not only myself and my then husband, but also me and my friends.
yeah.
And so that led to this experience of disconnection.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. 100%. Because, your brain is going to adapt to what you give it. And so if all you're giving it is the shame spiral, which is what I call it, when you start saying, I'm not good enough, I didn't do this, because then your brain is going to go out and find all of the other times that it didn't work and that something bad happened or you caused something to not do, what it needed to do. And so that's what creates that spiral, because then your brain's on high alert to notice everything in the future that you're not doing or that you're, weren't successful at. And, in the grand scheme of life, you're not going to be successful at everything. Like, there's going to be things that you're not good at or you don't have enough knowledge to do yet. And when we live in that perfectionist mindset, that high achieving mindset, we don't process that. Like, there shouldn't be anything I'm not good at. I can do this. And the problem is, like you said, society praises us for that. Those are the people who get the promotions. Those are the people who get rewarded and on stages and all of these things, when internally they're usually blank inside, no emotions, no feelings. And that's really, and then they just get told they're depressed. Like, you're depressed, here's some pills, and let's move on. And it's so much deeper than that, because they've been working so hard on that mask. There's been no time to develop what's underneath that. And so when you've lived in that state for so long, like I call it the ashes, where you're numb, you have no feelings, you have no opinions. Like, you adapt to the opinion of the room. Like, what should I say right now that would make this room more comfortable, more palatable, more successful, whatever it is. And so then when you have to sit with yourself, whether it's a layoff or relational harm or whatever that ends up being, you realize that you can't control the room. You can't do these things. But in doing all of this, you have not developed any of your own self. And so then you just end up blank and sitting there and having no connection. But on the outside, everyone thinks you have this perfect life, right? Like in my marriage, I was married, I had 2 kids, I was an executive at this nonprofit. Like on the outside, you would say like, she has the perfect life. I had the house, I had the car, like all the things. But inside for 10 years of that marriage, I wasn't present in that marriage. I was whoever he needed me to be, whoever he wanted me to be. The mom I was supposed to be. I went on the right field trips and I did the right parenting things, but I wasn't there. And that's what I think so many people deal with is they've put on this perfection mask, but they haven't participated in it.
Yes, absolutely agree with you. And that feeling of I should be grateful for what I
Yeah.
have. That kind of I should be happy because I have all of these things. I've ticked
Yeah.
all the things off the life list,
Mm-hmm.
and yet here I am feeling disconnected, numb. Like, is this it? I remember thinking at one point, is this it? Like, is
Yeah.
this the rest of my life? Is this what I've been working for, my
Mm-hmm.
whole life to feel like this? And this sinking feeling. So what would you say then? Is it that we are disconnected from? Because I think that it's kind of what I see so much in my clients is this exact thing: perfect
Mm-hmm.
life from the outside, high achieving, living the life that most people would envy. And some of them realized actually there is a disconnection in my marriage, or it hasn't been very happy, I haven't had my needs met. Some don't, and they're very shocked by their behavior in so much as they've had an affair. And of
Mm-hmm.
course, when you're the good girl and you're the perfectionist, having an affair is an absolutely terrifying identity rupture.
Yeah, for sure.
Complete dissolution of self. Like, how have I got here? But the thing that I hear time and time again, which I really would love to hear from from you about, is that in the affair they felt alive,
Mm-hmm.
and they felt free, and they felt like oftentimes deeply connected to this person and really struggle to cut it off or to let it go. So I'd love to
Mm-hmm.
hear from you. What do you think? What do you think's going on under there?
Yeah, so our nervous system works out of 2 databases, the threat database and the safety database. And so when you've been living so long filling up that threat database of the masks and slips, someone's going to notice, I have imposter syndrome, all these things. And, if your marriage is reinforcing that and your career is reinforcing that, that threat database is filling up so much that your nervous system can't access that safe database anymore. And so when you're with this other person who has no idea what this threat database is doing, you get to create kind of those safety moments with them where you can say what you want to say and you can do what you want to do. And they accept you for that. And it's loving and it's caring. And that's teaching your nervous system, this person is my safe place. This person does the right things, says the right things. And I get to create safety around them. And so even when you realize it's not the right situation, it's not the right relationship, your nervous system has latched onto that and created that this is a safe place versus this is a threat place. And it can be figured out that, those are safe experiences, not a safe person or not a safe place. And it's really teaching your body other safety signals that you can have safety, in yourself. You can have safety in your other relationship, or if you choose to go down the path of being by yourself for a while, you can create those safety moments for yourself that it doesn't have to hinder on a person. But when that safety database is empty, it's so easy for someone to come in and start filling it up just by giving you that inner validation.
Yeah, and I think also the mirror that they are to that part of you as well, because exactly that is like
Yeah.
you can find that safety inside of yourself, or that aliveness, or that freedom, or that bliss, or that joy, or even the sexual ecstasy that you might have
Mhm.
experienced in that affair versus your marriage, or even with yourself up until this point. I see it as if you access that in the affair, then you can access that outside of the affair.
Yes.
And you can access that even in the marriage that you're in.
Yeah. Hmm.
But it takes work, right?
Yes.
It takes doing this work because I think that, again, we get very stuck in Western society on
Hmm.
traditional psychotherapy as the only method to
Yeah.
help us in these situations. But the truth is, it's deeper than the cognitive mind, which is what
Hmm.
traditional psychotherapy works on. Right? We need to get into the nervous system. We need to start meeting those frozen moments, because I love that you also brought in that you had a relatively good childhood. Like on paper,
Hmm.
it didn't. I was exactly the same. I look back at my
Yeah.
childhood. I was like, I don't have any childhood trauma. I don't know what anyone's talking about.
Yeah.
And then you realize, oh, so what did you see about your childhood and how that? And you can go in as much detail as or as little detail as you want, but how your childhood beyond the high achieving part, how did that impact the way that you showed up in your first marriage?
Yeah, so I mean, honestly, it was just a continuation of that. My parents were both extremely high achievers. They had fantastic like corporate jobs. My sister was a high achiever, but my older sister was very into her emotions, very into her voice. Like, I'm gonna speak, and I would see her and my dad would really, sounds weird, but like bond over the friction that their opinions created. And that freaked me out because I'd be like, oh my God, he doesn't, think she's the best person in the world because she disagrees with him. And what I didn't see at the time was he loved that. He loved her having her own opinion, and he would push it on purpose to, play devil's advocate and teach her how to critically think and all these things. But in my mind, I was like, there's tension. That tension is bad. So I need to just take whatever he's saying and mirror that back to him because that will make him happy. And looking back now, you think, yeah, but then I didn't get to develop into anything. I didn't have that. And so then when I moved into that marriage with another man who had very strong opinions and very particular way he wanted things to work, I did the same thing. I just took his opinions and mirrored them back to him, took his thoughts, mirrored them back to him. And so I never had that chance or felt I had that chance to say, I don't agree with that. Like, I think this, because I hadn't developed what I thought. I didn't have really any thoughts on a lot of things because I just took my dad's opinions, mirrored them back, and my husband's parents' opinions and mirrored them back. And then when I was all of a sudden on my own after my marriage, I was like, wait, I'm supposed to like think things about things, and I don't know how to think for myself. And I think that was the most shocking thing when I looked back on my childhood was I as much as I learned to think critically and logically and achieve and make straight A's and go to the top tier college, I never actually learned to think for myself. Because if you think about it, when you achieve in school, you're doing the same thing. You're taking the knowledge from your teacher and mirroring it back to them. And even if they want you to think critically, they want you to think critically in this exact way. And so by being a high achiever in school, it's just reinforcing that take this information, mirror it back. So I finally realized I've been doing that my entire life since I was itty bitty, and no one had to say, okay, Lauren, keep the peace, don't rock the boat. But I think I saw my sister rocking the boat, and as a little kid, didn't understand that that was okay. And so I went so far to the other extreme of it was my job to keep the boat steady. So no matter what was happening, my whole job was to keep everything steady. And I carried that well into adulthood.
That's the thing. I don't think we realize how much these moments, which at the time seemed innocuous, really and truly, begin to shape our entire reality, our entire life. And we are all just big children dressed up in these adult bodies.
Yeah.
Really, aren't we? We're just
Mm-hmm.
walking around trying to relate ultimately from our pain, and we don't even realize we're trying to relate from our pain. We don't have any understanding that the other person is also trying to relate from their pain and their
Right.
wound. And
Mm-hmm.
of course you attracted a man who had strong opinions that was perfect to
Yeah.
neatly fit in with your wounds, which meant that you had to shrink and keep the peace, stop the boat rocking. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that will resonate with so many people listening to this, and to myself too. I didn't have a clue who I was, really and
Yeah.
truly. I had just gone through the schooling system. And as you said, and I'm really glad you brought that up, I think, you know, the schooling system taught us how to abandon ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
It
Yeah.
taught us we had to sit in class at a time we were told to. We couldn't talk. We could go for a wee when we were allowed to.
Mm-hmm.
We had to do particular modules or curriculums that we might not have enjoyed, but we had to just do what we were told. And okay,
Yeah.
with children, of course, to a
Mm-hmm.
degree, we have to do what we're told. But also, we are shaping generations and generations of people to never trust themselves, to
Yeah.
never be able to listen or to inquire what is actually true, not just what someone is standing in front of the classroom and telling me is true. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that even if you don't recognize that you had any trauma in your childhood, you can recognize that that was an experience in your childhood, and
Yeah.
being told off,
Absolutely.
yeah, for being told off for probably saying something that was a bit controversial or didn't fit with the
Mm-hmm.
narrative, or you speaking up in class. I got told repeatedly that I talk too much. So
Yeah.
it was like, and now look, here I am.
Right. I'm making
Talking
money
on a
not
podcast.
talking.
Yeah, exactly. Made a whole career out of it.
Yeah.
But it's
I
like
think
that.
especially girls and women, you
Mm,
know, you're taught that you just need to be the good girl, right? Like, no one likes the loud, opinionated girl. Like, don't be that person. Don't draw attention to yourself. And, when you do, you get punished for that. And so, as women, I think it's even more reinforced that sit and wait and do till you're told. And we've come a long way in, the last 50 years, but women are still, to a large extent, be seen and not heard until I want you to be heard.
yeah.
And we see that a lot in schools too.
Yeah. And I think one of the pieces, and this is quite a controversial topic that I'm about to bring in right now, but I do think that unfortunately what women have been taught, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, have been that in order to be heard and to be seen is to be like men. Like
Yeah.
we have to, and again, it fits the perfect narrative of the high achiever,
Mm-hmm.
push, be strong, drive, get into that boardroom, be an executive, because when you do that, you've won. You've
Yeah.
won something. I don't know what competition we're trying to be in, but we've won it.
Right.
We do it. And then, so this feeling of dissatisfaction or emptiness when we as women reach that peak of our career, just like
Mm-hmm.
you did and I did, and still feeling numb and
Yeah.
dead inside. And I think that there is, again, because we have been taught that that is the sign of success, that's a sign of achievement, we
Mm-hmm.
are moving further and further away from our essence or from who we are, because at our core, the feminine have so much more, we're so much more emotional. We
Yeah.
do feel we should be led by our heart. We don't have to be succeeding in order to deemed a success. Mothering is a magical thing to do. It's just that somewhere along the line we started trying to be men
Mm-hmm.
rather than women.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I'd love to hear your take on that, whether that feeds into your beliefs.
Yeah, I totally agree because, to be successful in the workplace, we're told don't bring emotions into it, right? Don't think emotionally, just think logically. And like I said, a lot of that's think like a man, right? Like, and leave everything else. But then we as women, especially mothers, do that all day, but then go home and be nurturing and love your kids and do everything for them and, do all of this at home, but then come back and have no emotion. And that expectant flip flop, I think really that's part of what drives women crazy is when can I show emotion? When can't I show emotion? So when you have to live, in that flip flop, one has to give. And most of the time the career can't give, right? That's how you support your family. And so you give at home. You give that emotional piece at home, but you still have to pretend you're going through that emotional piece. You still have to pretend to be, you know, the doting mother and the doting wife and all of that when inside you're not because you've been told to shut that down.
And it's exhausting to live like that. And I
Yes.
think that I think that there's so many reasons why marriages, don't work, or there is affairs that happen, or relational harm is caused within relationships.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the expectation right now on men and women, like this isn't just, this isn't in any way to disparage what men go through as well. They have their own stuff that they're having to deal with. But talking as women about women, the experience of having to no, hang on, let me rephrase that. The experience of being able to have it all is
Mm-hmm.
actually crushing women
Yeah.
even more and
Mm-hmm.
disconnecting us from our hearts and from ourselves, from our souls, because I'd say it's nigh on impossible
Yeah.
to really truly have it all. And I don't have children, but at the age of 43, I have watched many of my peers have
Mm-hmm.
children, and especially when I worked in TV. And that exhaustion of trying to be a businesswoman at the same time as a mother, at the same time as a wife, at the same time as a daughter of aging parents, of sisters, of, it's so much that
Yeah.
our relationships become this place of, well, we just kind of give up, I think, in
Yeah,
many
it
ways.
becomes very transactional. It becomes
Yeah.
very much like, okay, I've got this thing at work today, you've got that thing, so we need to coordinate here and do that. And all of a sudden you're living with a business partner. And you're not going to get those safety cues. You're not going to get those emotional rejuvenation from your partner because everything becomes a transaction. And then when you don't have that emotional tie, that romantic tie, all of a sudden you want it. You want that. But now you're looking at your partner like a transaction. And so I think that's where a lot of women, may stray into that affair situation of, I want someone to see me as me. I want someone to see my internal, my feminine. But my partner is my business partner at this point. And I see that a lot with people with kids too, because then the kids leave home and all of a sudden you're like, okay, now I'm living with this person that I don't really know. And our entire lives have been transactions around the kids. So now what? And I think even, people that don't have children see that same thing and they're like, okay, now I have this transactional partner, but what about me? What about my internal? And
Yeah.
that itself is such a cue. I call it that the ember, where you finally go, wait, I'm a person. I I want something. And I talk about there's three ways to handle an ember. One is set off a fireball, which I don't recommend. It may get you where you need to go, but it is not fun in the process.
What's a
The other,
fireball? Like an affair, you mean?
uh, an affair could be a fireball, yeah. For me, it was just I needed everyone to understand everything about what I was going through, and everyone needed to get it. And my ex husband was very calm, very rational. And so I looked like this crazy person, but really I just wanted someone to understand what I needed, what I was going through. And so I do think you see that with affairs. If they're like, no, no, I want you to see me. But it becomes much more subtle, right? Instead of yelling to the world, look at me, I just need one person to look at me. And so they have that ember of who am I? What am I doing? And how you handle that ember is going to set your life onto a certain course, whether it's I'm going to take that, I'm going to nurture it, I'm going to do the work, right? I'm going to look at my inner self, or I'm just going to go out there and make whatever happen with no rhyme or reason or whatever. Or so often with women, we see them just let the ember pass. You go, who am I? What am I doing? And then you throw that behind you and you just keep going. And so depending on which of those paths you take, that's going to determine kind of where that next step is.
Yeah, it's the portal that I refer
Mm-hmm.
to, that I
Yeah.
believe that much pain in a relationship, however it might show up, perhaps it is your affair, perhaps you have been cheated on, or perhaps there has been some harm in it. Like that is the opportunity where everything is now burning down to the ground,
Yeah.
that you get to choose differently and you get to do something differently. And I'd say that it can feel really scary. Like, I must have felt scary for you to suddenly be like, well, if I'm not this perfect, high achieving, if that's not who I am, that's how I learned to survive, or that's how I learned to be in the world, then who the hell am I?
Yeah. And that can be terrifying. And, so many people, you don't get to just crawl into bed and be like, okay, I need to figure this out. You still have to live your life, whether that's parenting or working or, doing whatever it is you have to do on a day to day basis. So now you're in that terrifying mode of I have no idea what's going on, but now I have to consciously put a mask on every day, which feels horrible. It feels heavy. You don't like that, but you have to put that on. And so, yeah, that creates its own kind of traumatic cycle.
Yeah, I remember that very clearly. After I'd done quite a lot of work on myself,
Mm-hmm.
I was still working in as a TV executive, and I remember it felt so heavy because it felt so out of alignment with
Right.
who I really was. And I'd realized, and the joke is that my parents, they're entrepreneurs, they're not even in the corporate world, but the path that I had been put down was to go into the corporate world. So
Mm-hmm.
it feels so terrifying to not know who you are anymore. If I'm
Yeah.
not the perfectionist who does achieve, then who the hell am I and how do I get there? And
Yeah.
so, what would you say is the first real step towards meeting that buried self?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think the first step, and it sounds so cliche, I guess, but is admitting that, something's not right. Like grabbing that ember and saying, like, something is not right here. And then from there, it's a slow process, which people don't like. They want, 5 steps to healing trauma or whatever. But it's a slow process of building those safety moments and building your capacity, because your body, your nervous system works on your subconscious level. And a lot of times your brain doesn't get a say in what you're actually doing, which is like you talked about earlier, the traditional psychotherapy, there's something called state dependent learning, which your body, in whatever state it's in when it learns the thing, it needs to be in that state to recall that thing. And so when you're in a therapist's office, you're calm, you're there for it, you're focused, you learn, these tips, these tricks, these coping mechanisms, whatever you want to call them. But then when you're out in the wild and life is handing you life, you don't have access to that because you're not in that calm, regulated state. And so your nervous system takes over, and your nervous system is going to find the best pattern that has happened in the past. And if that has been, a threat pattern, that's where your nervous system's going to go and it's going to do it. And so what you have to do is create the capacity that gives you enough time to say, no, it's not a threat response. This is a different situation. And that capacity takes a lot of time and work to do. And like you've said, it is work. And, I think right now in society, we don't like that term because people don't want to have to work at it. They want you, give me a checklist, tell me what to do. If I need to meditate for 20 minutes in the morning and then drink 9 cups of water and then, do a routine before bed, I will do that. But they don't want to do the inner work, look inside themselves, because it doesn't have the immediate payoff, right? If we're given a checklist, that's still our high achieving. Like, okay, I did healing. I did what I needed to do, but you didn't really. You checked some stuff off a list. And so it is slow. And that first step is so slow, but it's giving your body enough time to catch up.
Yeah. The body is where, well, the body keeps the score, as
Yeah.
we know. And I think this is, again, one of, and I don't ever want a therapy bash. I still have psychotherapy. I love my
Yeah.
psychotherapist. I love it's a warm hug. I just go and get it and I feel better and I get to talk and cry and be held. But the transformational work, which is what you and I are talking about, where you actually get to shift now,
Mhm.
takes time. As you say, relational healing is is a long-term investment in
Mhm.
yourself,
Yeah.
because the truth is you've spent the last 30, 40, 50, 60 years
Hmm.
operating from that same survival mechanism.
Yeah.
So there is no three quick step to transform your life.
Hmm.
But you know I can say categorically, without a shadow of a doubt, it is worth it.
Yeah. Oh, 1,000%.
What
And
do you
I agree. I think, psychotherapy, I think, uh, meditation, I think these wellness tools are all applicable when your body is ready for that. But, no amount of meditation is going to teach your body that it's safe to do this or it's safe to do that or who you are. Meditating
Mm,
isn't going to teach you who you are underneath, but it's a fantastic tool for momentary triggers or things like that. And I think so often people are sold these tools as the silver bullet. And, if you go and you meditate and you gratitude journal and you do this sleep hygiene routine, everything's going to be fine. And while all of those things work to an extent in some way, in some state, that's never going to get to the root cause of
no.
who am I, what am I doing, and how do I teach my body that the war's over, that I
Yeah.
can take a deep breath. I'm no longer in that fight or flight war mentality. And,
Mm,
that's why I think so many modalities work so well together, because there is a place for all of it. But I believe, which I'm sure you do in the work you're doing, that inner transformational work is the key foundational piece to being able to do any of the other things.
yeah. Yeah, I mean that's what's life changing. That is what will change your life. And
Yeah.
coming into the body and yeah, being able to meditate from a place of presence, which
Yeah.
quite honestly I had no concept of being present
Yeah.
before I started to do this. I wasn't slow. I was hurried everywhere. I was still busy. I mean, I've still got a late problem, which is the
Yeah.
fun shadows, but I will leave everything till the last minute. But the truth is that if your soul is here in this lifetime to
Mhm.
evolve and mature beyond what it has known so far, then this is the work that you need to do. There is
Mhm.
no amount of talking about it, because talking about it is only operating on the cognitive mind.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, there are no pathways between the cognitive mind and the part of your nervous system that is still playing out the pattern.
Yeah.
So that's why you can be in therapy for 10 years and still feel like you're still stuck in the same place. And I think people feel like they're broken because they haven't been able to get to somewhere else, or be
Mhm.
free from what they're carrying, or be free from that pattern. Or and look, don't get me wrong, like you talk about the ashes coming round, like healing
Mhm.
is not linear, right? We have to
Right.
go through these lessons and see these patterns over and over and over again. I'll tell you, my own in my own relationship, I mean, I am here to help women, heal the pattern of self-betrayal, which 99.9% of women operate from anyway. The
Yes.
affair is the moment that's come alive.
Mm-hmm.
I, in my own relationship, have had to face a very painful seeing that I
Mm-hmm.
have still, in some degree, been abandoning myself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not my partner's fault. That's
Right.
not his fault. That's what I am allowing because I'm not standing in my truth, because there's still a
Mm-hmm.
part of me that is afraid that if I do, I might not be loved. I might be rejected. I might not be met. And that has been incredibly confronting, and yet so powerful that I now have enough awareness to be able to see, oh, okay, here we are again. And it doesn't mean that, and I'd love to hear your take on this as well, Lauren, but it doesn't mean that it's not hard for me still. Like,
Mm-hmm.
even though you can break free from the pattern, not just be aware of it, it's still hard to do the thing that your nervous system has learned for most of your life that it's not safe to do.
Mm-hmm.
But in order to be able to create a deeper, more intimate love, to be able to create that intimacy or that emotional connection that you felt in your affair and are worried you're never going to feel again, this is the work that you have to do,
Mm-hmm.
because otherwise you're going to completely associate that experience with somebody outside of yourself, when really and truly this is an internal shift that needs to happen first.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And you talk about, breaking free from the pattern but still living it. And that's something that I want to be so clear with women. Like, I don't know everything. I am not a guru. I'm not on the top of the mountain. I'm going through this spiral the same as everyone else. And I like to equate it to a spiral staircase, right? So there's a window on one side of the staircase. Every time you loop that staircase, you're going to see that same window, but you're a step higher. And so the window is going to look a little different each time. And then the next time you go up, it looks a little different because you're a little higher. So you're back at the same lesson, but you're seeing it from a different altitude. And that is what mastering the spiral is about, is being able to see that lesson being a lesson and being able to continue forward and not dwell in that situation. And everyone is going to go through it their entire life, because life is cyclical, and healing and recovery and doing all of that is cyclical, because we never get to the end. The end is when your life on this earth is over. And so that's why everything I do is called The Spiral. So I have the Spiral podcast. I have Spiraling into Control as my book, because I want people to understand, one, spiraling is not always a bad thing. Like, we talk about, oh, spiraling, and that's usually down or shame, but your life is a spiral. Whether you're going to spiral up or down is your life and your choice and how you decide to live. And so spiraling into control is about being able to recognize when that spiral is happening and mastering what it takes to move out of that ash back up into your rise and your authenticity. And every time you're going to get to stay in the rise a little longer, but that doesn't mean you're not going to still have those feelings. Like I said, I was in the ashes for about a few weeks ago, and I'm like, I literally wrote the book on this, and I know I'm in the ashes. I know that I'm doing this, but you have to honor what your body needs at that point. Like, I can't intellectualize my way out of it. I know I'm in the ashes right now, and my body needs to do what it needs to do. And so I think that's so important for people to realize, is that there is no like finish line. You never get to graduate from building your identity, living through whatever your trauma was or whatever, situation you were in, but you get better at it.
Yeah. And I wish that in many ways there was a finish line.
Yes, that would be great. And that's what sells. And that's the problem I see is, people selling a finish line, but then people don't reach the finish line. And so now they feel like they failed at that, because there is no finish line. You're never going to, when I started really working with women, people were like, oh, well, if you're going to coach, you need this transformation story. They're going to start here and they're going to end here and be so good and healed and happy. And I'm like, but that's not how it works. Like, I can't give you, you're going to get to this point, because it's always going to spiral. You're always going to end up, but you can master it better. But
Mm.
I don't have a pretty picture to paint you of, if you go through these 6 weeks of programming, if you do these things, then you're healed and there's a finish line. And seeing a finish line get sold to women is one of my biggest pet peeves and soapboxes I could sit on for hours, because it is harm to women disguised in, pretty packaging. And I truly believe that selling that finish line is harming people.
Yeah, I would agree with you. And it is hard to offer the work that we both do because there isn't, yeah, we can't promise. I can't promise anything. I don't know. I do not know what your soul's evolution is meant to look like in this
Mm-hmm.
lifetime. I've got
Yeah.
no idea whether or not you're going to hit this, see this about yourself in the next 6 months or the next 3 years or
Mm-hmm.
tomorrow. I don't know. Are you going to break free from this pattern? Ever? Possibly not, but you're going to have more awareness. I love your visual of the staircase with the window. That's such a brilliant way of looking at it. And I think that, but what I would love to hear from you, because in my own experience, what this work has given me, okay, so it hasn't given me a finish line, right? There is no finish line in my life. And even though, as I said, I wish there was, because it's
Yes.
exhausting.
We
But
all wish
when you're
there
on this path, you're on the path. But I'm so grateful for it, because we've talked about how hard it is. We've talked about there's no finish line, and I don't want people listening to this thinking, "Oh my God, well then I'll just stay where I am," because it
right.
sounds like it's never going to end, and I'm never going to get to being healed. But the truth is that the closer that you come to yourself, the more alive you will feel, the
A
more
thousand.
connected. Oh, the more
Mm-hmm.
connected to nature. I walk outside and I feel alive just by walking through the trees and
Mm-hmm.
the grass. And I feel I am so much more able to be able to experience and receive love than I ever was before. I was so protected. I was so protected and defended from love that I was never going to be able to experience it in this
Mm-hmm.
way, ever. Sexual pleasure. I the pleasure that I can experience now in my body is beyond
Yeah.
ever what I could have, and that was nothing to do with any partner. That is to do
Mm-hmm.
with my body and how open I am to receiving and to
Yeah.
softening and to honestly surrendering, which I wasn't
Mm-hmm.
before. Because when you're a high achieving perfectionist, you do not surrender to anyone, right? You are.
Right. Even yourself. Yeah.
Yes, you are tight. You've got somewhere to go. You're very busy. There's no space to actually soften in any way. And so I think that it might not be that there's a finish line, but on the journey through the spiral, through the moments where you're going to see the pattern come back up, through where you get to rise a little bit higher, you also get to experience joy and bliss and pleasure and love and all these experiences that you weren't able to before because you were living from a protected place.
Yeah, exactly. And, I talk about that ashes being, the numbness, the disconnected, the just like, I can't feel anything. On the opposite end of the spectrum is the rise. And that is, you have access to those emotions. And I remember so clearly, I had hired a business coach because I knew I wanted to start a business. And I called her crying about something that doesn't matter. But I remember her sitting there being like, Lauren, when is the last time you felt joy? And that question alone knocked me on my butt because I couldn't answer it. And I was like, I don't know. Like, had I had happiness every now and then? Yeah, I mean, I'd experience happiness, but like, what was joy? And no, I haven't experienced joy. But when you get to that rise state, you have that. You can access your emotions. Those doors have been opened where you can feel the love for your kids or your partner or your family members. You can access joy. You can access, excitement and, uh, realize what it is your body and your soul wants. Because for me, you talk about nature and being so connected. And everyone finds that for themselves. And for me, it is solitude, but not in a I'm hiding myself way. It's That's my chance to come back to myself and center myself and love myself. And for so long, I played an extrovert. I played the like, yeah, I'm out here, I'm networking, I'm doing these things. And it was when I hit that kind of rise that I was like, that's not me. That's not what I love. I love when my husband takes the kids out of the house for an hour or two and I get to just be. I just get to be with myself, be who I am with no agenda. And for a lot of women I work with, it is nature, that being outside, even just taking a walk around your neighborhood, right? It's not a forest. You don't have to be in like this, magical fairy forest, but even just being outside and feeling the wind and the sun. And, for some people it is going out and being with people and, whether it's going to walk around the mall or something where you can just be with other humans. And every person, that's part of the journey, is figuring out what is that for you that gives you that joy, that feeling of just lightness. And that is such a critical part of it, is knowing that that's on the other side of this work. And you're going to feel that. And then that means the next time you're knocked into the ashes, you have that. You still have that knowledge of, no, I want to get back to here. You may not be able to access it right now, but you know it's there, and you know that's what you're striving for. And that's how you master it faster, quicker, more accurately each time, is you take the knowledge of every rise season that you've gone through in your life, and you take that back to the ashes with you to help you get back faster.
Yes. Like I know now more than anything, even if this relationship ended, and I would be absolutely devastated if this
Mm-hmm.
relationship ended, like so much grief. But what I do know is that if it did, I would make my way back up again.
Yeah.
And he feels the same way too. This isn't something that I've just decided on
Yeah.
my own. We talk about it a lot. It's like I would be so sad, but I also know that I would be okay. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that was one of the things keeping me in my marriage for so long was I don't think I'm going to be okay. If
Yeah.
this ends, I'm not going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
And he's not going to be okay. And my whole life is going to end. And when you have had a total dissolution of everything that you thought yourself to be and your marriage and your career and all your friendships,
Mm-hmm.
you're kind of like, well, I've done that once, so we know we can rise again, as you say.
Yeah.
And I think knowing that you can hold yourself through it all is another huge part of the work that you offer and I offer around creating that inner safety of I
Mm-hmm.
know that I can go to the depths of grief, rage, fear, shame, and I can come back out again because
Yeah.
I have the safety inside of myself to hold myself in that. And I don't
Mm-hmm.
need to put it in the hands of another who
Yeah.
might leave at any point, which is terrifying for my nervous system.
Yeah, but I mean, you hit the nail on the head there, that it's so much about being able to know who you are and what you need to be able to get back to that rise state. And, like you said, I think for so long we tie ourselves to a person, an environment, a job, a thing that, I felt the same way in my first marriage, that like, I can't leave. What if I left? This would happen, or that would happen, or I wouldn't be able to do this, or. But now I know, and I'm in the exact same situation. My current relationship, like, I would be devastated, but I know I'd be okay. I know I'd be able to get up in the morning and take care of the kids and help them manage their emotions through it. And it would suck, and I would not like it, but I could do it. And that's the key, is that you now hold that power, that you can control your life, you can fix your life. And that power and that feeling of power of I'm going to be okay. And I think that's the whole work. That's it.
I've got goosebumps. You're right. It absolutely is. You know what? Let's leave it there because I feel like we've just hit the whole nubbin of the entire podcast.
Yeah.
So I'm going to leave that. Lauren, I would love for you to share how people can come and find you, how people can come and work with you.
Yeah, thank you for letting me share that. Yeah, my website's laurentobey.com. Toby is Tobey. But laurentobey.com. I also have the Spiral podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts. And you can reach out to me on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, anywhere that you can. I'm there. And there's also contact form on my website. And I'd love to talk to people. I answer all my own emails. I don't have, a gatekeeper or a VA or anyone. So I love getting emails from women that are just open and willing to share and willing to say, I know I need help. And so, yes, reach out. Just come share your story. You don't even have to work with me, but come share your story. And we want to be there to support you through that. So.
Thank you so much, Lauren. It was an absolute honor to have you on the show. And I am so pleased that we've managed to hopefully have a conversation that might have landed somewhere for some people, even if right now cognitively it still feels a little confusing. I'm sure it's somewhere in your body or your soul knows what we're talking about is real. So
Yeah.
thank you so much, Lauren.
Absolutely. Thank you, Alex. Thanks for letting me join today.
You're welcome. Thank you for listening to the Deeper Love podcast. If today's episode spoke to you, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And if you're ready to go deeper, you'll find all the ways to work with me in the show notes. Until next time.